Hello, I'm Ryan Decaria, and you've landed in Making the Most of Motif, a study in Hamilton, where today we're going to talk about the musical Hamilton, but we're going to narrow it down. We're going to keep the focus really tight. One, because I'm not an expert in theater, I'm not an expert in music theory, in acting, in a lot of those areas. I am a writer. And I published a couple of books. I'm going to flash them here for you. Devil the Microscope and We Shall Be Monsters are my two books. You can find them on Amazon. What is motif? What are we talking about here? You've probably heard the word. It gets thrown around a lot. That is a little bit ambiguous, kind of like the word theme. What is theme, right? But we're going to talk about it because it's important. So a lot of people collaborated on Hamilton, and we know that Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote the book, music, lyrics, and the music arrangements with Alex Lacamar. But you can see all the people that contributed to this masterpiece. You had director Thomas Kail, and you had the original book that inspired it. That Lin-Manuel Miranda picked up at the airport for some light reading on a vacation and was just inspired by Hamilton's life because I think he saw the motifs that carried through his life and the rise and the fall of his life. So what is a motif is the question, right? What am I talking about? So you can read on the screen kind of the dictionary definitions, but a motif is something that is repeated, an idea, an object, a color, an idea, the theme, woven through your story. And I like to think that this class can apply to any kind of creative endeavors, right? It can apply to painting or whatever it is you want. Writing is my expertise, but I think you can really apply this to anything. Also, you can apply it to if you just want to enjoy art or dig deeper into what makes the novel you're reading that good, right? Or Hamilton, for instance. You can learn these ideas and apply them to your critique of something. So, if we're repeating something, right, this idea, it could be words, it could be notes in a music or bars of music or chords, chord progressions that repeat over and over in a song. It could be something in a movie, like in the movie Sixth Sense, where you see the color red, and whenever you see the color red, it's meaningful. Those kind of things. I loved how this last definition talks about science, right? Motifs occur in nature, right? Some things that are repetitious. And I just love that. I love the idea that as writers or creators, we can put in something that replicates kind of that happens naturally, and it can add a great deal to our work. Okay, the next word I want to talk about is symbols. The symbols is that something that's standing for something else. It could be that resemblance, could be the item. Like in Hamilton, the symbol is the coat he wears. Every time he changes his coat, it means something. So it becomes a symbol. And we watch for that, even subconsciously. Now we see him taking off a jacket and putting it on. Well, that's an act that he does, right? And the coat he wears symbolizes something. But just his changing coats is a transition. We know he's transitioning in his life from something to something else. Whether it's putting on a army jacket, right? That he's now part of the army and he's actively fighting, right? He dons a new jacket and then he takes that off and he puts another jacket on. And now he's a lawyer, right? And then at the end he's wearing that like fancy green jacket that is kind of that symbol that he's kind of stately, right? So when you watch for that and you see that on stage, him taking off a jacket and putting a new jacket on is a symbol of that progression in his life. And the jacket is a symbol of his new role in society. So things like that, those objects that represent something else, even in an unconscious mind, And Hamilton does as well. We'll talk about some more examples in a little bit. Okay, here's the doozy, right? Theme. Everyone who's writing or creating loves to think about theme and what their theme is. A lot of times people will state that back to us as we're creating, and then will kind of dawn on us, yes, that's the theme, that's what I was trying to say. Oftentimes it doesn't come out in your very first draft, but I know some people love to put the theme on like a post-it note and put it on their wall. This is what I'm writing towards. And if you can get that, I think the earlier the better as you write, because you can start soaking in the theme using motifs, using symbols. So what is theme, right? It's that central topic, that idea that we're trying to convey, that we're trying to focus on. We're exploring through our medium, whatever media we're using, right? We're trying to get that idea of that idea, right? We're going to get that idea across. And Hamilton has a ton. And I've heard some people say that you can only have one theme in a book, right? Or a short story. And Hamilton, I think, is proof that you can explore multiple themes. It's a longer media, right? It's a pretty long piece of work. But they explore many themes. And he puts them, Lin-Manuel Miranda puts them in his songs, right, and his song titles. Look around, right? They say that it's repeated, right, and that's what we start seeing. So we're going to look around for these motifs, and he presents them, like I said, in song titles, and repeats them so often that they start to stand out. And when we hear for the second time a word or a phrase, then it starts to resonate with us, and we hear it again, right? And as human nature, we start seeing patterns, and we love patterns as humans. We love to see the patterns in things. We love to find meaning. So as we start hearing something happen multiple times, we start applying meaning to it. Well, what do they mean by that this time? Motifs are everywhere in Hamilton. And we're going to talk about 4 kinds. There are more, and you can see them throughout the musical. But the ones I want to talk about are words. Of course, words, right? Those are the easiest to recognize because we hear them and we see them spoken, and we have context for them, and the context can change and the meaning changes, and it should change, and it should cause us to see or interpret them a little bit differently. And we bring part of ourselves to it, right? We see things that are this pattern, like I said, we see them and hear them over and over again. We start putting the pieces together, and often subconsciously our mind's working, and we're putting the points together and say, last time it meant this, and now he's saying this. And we're going to talk specifics in a second, but another area is the music. The chords, not chords, but the bars of music that he puts together, and then uses those repetitiously and changes them a little bit for purpose, for meaning. The costuming, I already talked about his coats, but we're going to talk about some more with the ensemble cast and how he uses their costuming to have effect, and how that becomes a motif throughout the play. And even the use of his ensemble actors, and how they can come in and out of the play on stage, right? And how they can have that meaning just by their appearance. The motif is them changing who they represent, and we'll get to that. Okay, words. There is, if you're a writer like me, that's your media. You write in words, and the words you use are important. Repeating that word or phrase over and over again does something to our readers' brains, or if we're watching something or reading something, hearing that, it does something to the brain, right? We seek meaning and we love that pattern, but we also start inventing story. And this is how you really can make your story more powerful, because everyone that reads or watches a work brings to it something of themselves, right? We bring everything that we know, everything that we read, all the stories in the past, the movies that we watched, and we're bringing that context. Like if you're writing about vampires, unless you're changing the story, you don't have to explain a lot about the history of vampires. Everyone brings it to the forefront. So in Hamilton, right, we already know that he is going to get shot, right? So we know that Hamilton dies, because that's in history. We're taught that it's part of the collective unconscious. Burr shoots Hamilton, right? And he's on the $10 bill. And most people, that's all they know. But a lot of people bring more to it, right? We know he's a founding father. We know he helped in the Revolution. We know all these things, and we're bringing what we know of the Revolutionary War with us. We're bringing what we know of social constructs, of race, of slavery, of all these things. We're bringing them with us, right? And we're interpreting it. So when we hear these things over and over again, we start adding our context of our lives that we know so far we apply it to what we're hearing. And as it changes, we're starting to invent story. We're filling in the blanks, right? And you want your audience to fill in some blanks. You want them to do some of the work because they feel invested now. They feel like, oh, I know this. I put those two and two together. So Lin-Manuel Miranda was so intent on using these motifs, these words, repetitious, that he put them in the song titles. And a lot of them are the song titles, and a lot of them are key parts of the song, the key moments in the song, because they are the words that were repeated. And we're going to go over the ones on the left here are the song titles, and the ones on the right are just ones I picked out. There's many, many ones. But My Shot, right? We're going to talk about that one in detail. Helpless, right? The word helpless first means kind of that puppy love, right? I'm helpless against his charms, right? I want him. I'm helpless against his eyes, right? But it quickly morphs, right, into Hamilton even says it. He says, when I was a kid, I felt helpless, and I'm never going to make it so you feel that helpless. And of course, that's where everything starts going wrong. And we know that Eliza does feel helpless many times over in this play because of Hamilton's actions. Satisfied, even within the song itself, the meaning changes a few times. At first, Hamilton says, I'm hungry, right? I'm never going to be satisfied because I'm always going to be chasing being better. I'm going to be better than what I was. And he saw that in Eliza. And so he sees that same thing in Angelica. And he calls her on it and says, you're like me. You'll never be satisfied. You're always going to be hungry and chasing, looking for something better. But as she's singing this song, she realizes that she's never going to be satisfied because she let Hamilton go, and that her sister's kind of in I don't know, danger is the right word, but it's going to be have problems because Hamilton's never going to be satisfied, including Eliza, even though maybe she hopes it's different. But she realizes that Hamilton's never going to be satisfied, and she's never going to be satisfied because she'll want Hamilton. And it's kind of a different way of that word. And then later on, we hear it again, and she says, you're never going to be satisfied, if anything, and your life is going to be worse for it. And that's after, when he goes, thank goodness you're here, Angelica. I need you. And she's like, I'm here for Eliza, right? And she realizes that that's kind of his downfall. Is the same thing that was his hunger and his motivation for success was also his downfall. So wait for it. That's Aaron Burr's kind of call, right? He's waiting. We hear that over and over again. Wait for it. I'm waiting for my shot. I'm waiting for my chance. Where Hamilton is all about taking his shot, Hamilton's all about waiting. Staying alive is the big part of that the show, we know that Hamilton's not, right? We're going towards the end. We're barreling toward the end where Hamilton's going to get shot. Burr shoots Hamilton. We hear it, right? Him say it in the first song. That would be enough, right? We hear this several times, and a lot of it is Eliza saying, if I could just have you in my life, if I could just be your wife, that would be enough. And she says, ask Hamilton, can't this be enough? And it's never enough, right? Because he's never satisfied. Nonstop, we hear over again. Hamilton writes like he's running out of time, right? He's got to keep going because eventually it is going to stop, right? So he's got to get it in. And then the idea of the hurricane, right? That Hamilton is still kind of in that hurricane. He never really left, and we get that a lot because of the layout on the stage, the way the stage turns, and the way the ensemble cast spins around him, especially in that song, but in a lot of other places, right? It's still that idea that everything's kind of going on around him, and but the idea of names is another big one. What's your name, right? That's one of the big things in the first song. Alexander Hamilton, that first song, he asked that a couple of times, and it's important, and we get that over and over again of what it means to be something, to rise up, to make yourself better, right? And that's Hamilton's motivation, that rising up. He wants to fight because he knows that he can improve his station, right? He wants a better colonies, right? He wants a better country, right? But he wants to improve himself. He hopes there's a war so that he can come out of it improved. The idea of work, right? Angelica is the one who originally says it, but Hamilton's the one that we see working and working to the detriment of him, even himself, right? He should have took a break. Maybe his life would have been better. Maybe he would have actually finished his trajectory, right? We have a trajectory where Hamilton could be president, right? That was his potential future because of his connections, his war heroics, his working with George Washington. And we get that funny song where they say he'll never be president now. And the show goes on to compare Hamilton to Macbeth, Shakespeare's Macbeth, and that's the connection, right? In Macbeth, we hear Macbeth hears that he's going to be king, right? And then the king shows up at his house, and Lady Macbeth says, if you're going to be king someday, we can make that happen sooner, right? And he can't let it go, right? He takes actions into his own hands, and he falters, and he does become king, but then it all falls around him. In Hamilton, it's sort of like that, right? It's a tragedy. It's Hamilton could have been president, but instead he fails as a person, as a husband, as a statesman, right? And he kind of hits rock bottom, and then we know what happens. He gets shot, right? And his life is over, and his work is over. His work ends just like that. What could he have done? What could he have become, right? And so we're actually living in that Shakespearean tragedy of his life. Okay, so I still have repetitious in there. Shoot. Stop. Okay, specifically, my shot, or just the word shot, right? How many times is that repeated, and in which ways? So we're just going to talk through these, right? We have a whole song called My Shot. I'm not throwing away my shot. I am not going to give away my future, right? He's worked hard. He's overcome so much adversity. He's found an opportunity, right? And he's not going to throw away his future. He's going to do everything he can. He's going to work hard so that he has those opportunities and he takes advantage of them. And then Aaron Burr comes in and says, if you flap your lips, you're going to get shot. You're going to get a bullet. You're not going to live long enough to do those things. And Hamilton is kind of like, what are you talking about? You got to go for it. You got to have an opinion. You got to go strong. You got to act. And Burr's over there saying, no, we're going to wait for it. I'm going to wait for my shot. I'm going to wait for my future, and then I'm going to grasp it when it comes. And so there's two very different sides of this theme that's being woven through, and we get those in this motifs of these words, because Hamilton's, I'm going to take my shot, and Burr's, I'm going to wait. So going to take a shot, going for it, action. When those, he says, I'm not throwing my shot, and then he's like, going to take a shot, right? I'm going to act now, do it. So it's a little bit different. We hear the gunshots at different times during the play. Sometimes even when you don't even expect it, you still hear that gunshot. It's the reminder that things are coming, right? Even after a song, if you listen, one of the last things you'll hear is that gunshot sound effect. They take a shot of whiskey, right? It's just another shot. It's this idea that keeps coming and coming. What does it mean, right? We know that shot is coming, the gunshot. I'm the damn fool who shot him. Burr is going to shoot Hamilton. So those are the ways, and there's more, that he uses the word shot. I love how the characters get their own motifs or words. Angelica's is satisfied. Eliza's is helpless. Burr's is wait. Hamilton's shot. So the characters have that meaning with them. Like, so when you see the character come on the stage, right, we're already thinking about the themes that they represent, or the motifs they represent. The characters themselves become that motif. Eliza becomes helpless. She doesn't have to say it, right? You can see it in her face. You can see it in the way she talks to Hamilton, and she represents that, and it brings more meaning to it. Now she becomes the motif, or they're intertwined at least. And every time Burr is on stage, right, we know what he wants. He wants to be in the room where it happens. He wants to be on the stage. He wants to make the big decisions. But he's not willing to take the shot. He's going to play it safe. He's going to take the long path, and he's hoping to get there. And every time he tries something, Hamilton's in his way. And he that frustration builds through the whole thing. We see it when he goes into Washington's office. He's ready to state his case. He's almost ready to take a shot. He's almost ready to say what he wants to say, and Hamilton ruins it, and he doesn't get to take a shot. And so we see the consequences. It's kind of interesting when you think about protagonist antagonist with Hamilton Burr. It's Hamilton's story, right? But if you think about who's the antagonist to who, Hamilton's just living his best life, right, until it all goes south, and Burr is just kind of a side character. Burr's not really doing anything to Hamilton until the letter at the end, until they call him on his, the payments. Burr's just kind of there. But if you think about Burr being the protagonist, then Hamilton is the antagonist to him. Everything Burr tries to do, Hamilton's there to ruin. And so it's just kind of interesting. I don't know if I would necessarily call, I guess they're dual protagonists, but as far as who's the antagonist to whom, Burr is less of an antagonist than Hamilton is. Hamilton's way more antagonistic toward Burr just by doing what he does. Okay, next I want to talk about the music, and there's so much you could talk about. There's so many callbacks, so many repetition. But the thing I want to bring up is the motif that is these 2+ bars of music. And this is from the 10 Dual Commandments. And so the notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And sometimes that 10 is the gunshot, right? Or a double gunshot of the dueling pistols. And what happens here is he sets up this kind of nice sounding piece of music progression and really soaks it in violence, right? This is a violent moment. The 10 dual commandments are the countdown. You count to 10 and then draw, aim, fire, right? You're shooting at someone else, probably killing them. It's a good chance of it. And as they lay out the rules of the duel in progression, we hear these notes, right? It's part of the music, and it's repeated in various ways. And then we get the callback. So as we hear Philip, Hamilton's son, practicing his counting in French, and Eliza's helping him. And we should, as we hear it, be alarmed for Philip, because this music as a kid, the callback is that it's a violent moment. It's a warning or forewarning that Philip is going to meet this violent end. His music is a violence, and it's interesting that they had him struggle at 7. Right? He counts to 7 and kind of messes up. And then he rebels from his mother. His mother wants him to do the chords the way that they were sung before, and Philip goes down with the notes. Right? He changes the notes a little bit, and Eliza tries to correct him, and he won't. He's rebelling from that. But it's associated with violence. We know that something bad's going to happen to him, even if you don't know the story and are unaware. Once you hear this note kind of in your mind, you've associated that with violence. Maybe you weren't necessarily aware of it, but you're going to be, because it comes back again. And we hear those same chords again, and as Philip is going to his own duel, we hear the countdown again, and it gets to 7, remember where he was rebelling, he was changing the melody. Well, it gets to 7 in his duel, and that's where it ends. He doesn't get the last. He's shot. And then as Eliza's trying to comfort him as he's dying, we hear this note again. So this is now completely associated with death. This pleasant count, these 2 bars of notes have become so meaningful to pulling the listener into the moment and creating something more out of what you're experiencing. And it's amazing. If you so I listened to this on YouTube, and you can write down that link and watch as he explains where else this melody comes into play, where else is put into the musical, and how they change it and why they've changed it. He speculates anyway. But I found it fascinating, and I wish I could talk to you about more about music theory, but I'm really out of my element here. But I just love the 10 Dual Commandments and how these 2 bars of music plus are used through the whole thing. It's amazing. Now I want to talk about the costuming in Hamilton, and not about the costumes themselves. We talked about Hamilton's jackets and how he changes jackets in meaningful moments of his life. What I want to talk about is the ensemble cast, and how people in the ensemble are just part of the background, right? They're characters, but they're dancing around. They're kind of a backdrop, and they wear that plain beige color. You can see in this shot the characters who are portraying characters on the screen are wearing color. Maybe that color is brown, right? But they're wearing color. And the ensemble that are dancing around singing in the chorus and are dancing are wearing that beige. And they do this for something that I would say is a motif. When someone from the ensemble comes out as a character, right? So you've seen him on stage, you've seen him dancing around, but now they're a character in the play or the musical. They're going to wear color. They're going to have a costume different than that plain beige, and they're going to come out and they're going to do something, and then they'll go back and take that off and become part of the ensemble again. So it's a way that you can use this cast of characters in ways, and they can portray different people. One of the ensemble portrays in a few scenes portrays Eliza, plays Mr. Schuyler, right? And he is in a colored coat at that moment, and he doesn't have any lines that he sings in that moment, but some of the characters do. They come out and they have they interact with one of the characters. Sometimes they have lines, but then they'll fade back in to the ensemble and take that color off. And there's a few times where the main cast, who normally has color and is portraying the same character over and over, will take off the color and come in as the ensemble. And I just think it's fascinating how they did that. But it's part of that idea. When you see someone without color, you, as a motif, don't pay attention to it. But when they do come in as a color, then you can pay attention to it. So here's an example of a character in the ensemble who put on a fancy dress and becomes a character. Philip interacts with this character in the ensemble for a moment, and she points him to the person who's end up gonna kill him. Which brings me to my last point: is how you can use character as a motif. Hamilton does this with this character, who some have called the secret character, or have named her the Bullet, and she represents death. And this is one of my favorite elements of Hamilton and a motif, in that when she shows up repeatedly, she is an omen of death, or and why they call her Bullet is she's the one that has the bullet in her fingertips and moves it across the stage, right, towards its target. But just having that in an ensemble cast, just picking someone and having that person represent stuff to the audience. So when we first see her as Death, she on stage, a British officer comes behind her and breaks her neck and carries her away. And then she kind of fades back into the ensemble. And then another moment when she meets Lawrence, they kill a British officer together and then shake hands. So that is a portent or an omen of Lauren's death. And in this picture, she's interacting with Philip, who she points to and tells him where to find the person that's going to kill him. And the other scenes is when she's the Bullet, and you can see this is one of the earlier scenes where she has the bullet in her fingertips and is moving slowly across the stage and misses Hamilton. But it's the omen of things to come, right? It's the continuing of that bullet, the shot, rather, right? Another time that's repeated, the shot, the loomingness coming, or there to remind you of what's coming. And eventually he does get shot, and to have a character that when she's on screen, and sometimes she's just in the ensemble and she doesn't wear color, and sometimes she's acting as the Bullet. I've tried to pay attention to just her when she's on stage, and it seems like it's not 100% consistent, but it's there a lot of the time, and I just think it's fascinating, and it makes me wonder if they had intention to any of the other ensemble characters who sometimes step out and into a character and sometimes back. Okay, so there you have a lot of the ways Hamilton, the musical, uses motif to strengthen storytelling and to help with the resonance that as an audience that we can carry with us and bring with us throughout the experience that we're having. And you can do this in your own work or your own writing. And you might be thinking, hey, Ryan, back up. This is a play, right? This is a musical. This is on stage. This is a collaborative effort. As me writing my story, right, I don't have to worry about all of this stuff. And you might be right, except you can, right? You can think about these things, and you can express this idea of repetition, of having a color that matters, and having that show up multiple times, having a character that is a side character, maybe a trickster character who keeps showing up and showing the main character, the protagonist, something about themselves, right? And so when that character shows up, now you have something that's going to be repeated, and it's going to reflect the theme and help that character learn something, right? And maybe they don't learn it the first 4 times, and so this character keeps showing up, right? You can have these elements, and this is why they say writing is revision, because the beauty that can go into writing is finding these elements and collaborating with editors and content editors and other editors and alpha readers and beta readers as they reflect back to you some of the things that maybe you haven't really thought about on a conscious level, but maybe they're subconsciously, or maybe you haven't noticed them before, but now you're getting these reactions and you're getting this feedback, and you have a chance to revise and to build on these things that are working, and creating these elements and having a character that maybe represents death, or having a word or a phrase that keeps coming back that reflects the theme, reflects something that the character knows and or doesn't know yet, that they're trying to learn, and they keep hearing this, and your characters can discover these as well as your audience. But as you use these in whatever creative endeavor that you want, I know in art, motifs are big, and in music they're even bigger. I would hope I'm right on that. So as you watch Hamilton, I just want you to appreciate the work that goes into the depth of everything that's going on on that stage, and the amount of thought and work that went into creating those motifs and having them be so resonant to us as an audience is just fantastic. As a critic, if that's what you're here for, to appreciate Hamilton a little more, I hope you learned something from this experience that you can take back to a review of, as you rewatch Hamilton, and just appreciate it a little bit more, because there's so much. I would say I just hit the tip of the iceberg on everything that went into the motifs of this, especially with the music. I just feel like this is one of those moments in history, right, where you have Shakespeare back in his day, and he was blowing people away with these works of his, and they've resonated with an audience ever since. And Hamilton is one of those moments, and there's a lot, right? I'm not going to try to mention other ones, but Hamilton is one of those, and it's worth studying. It's worth rewatching, as to appreciate it, or to enjoy it, or to learn from it in your own creative endeavors. So I hope you learned something from this video. And again, I'm Ryan Decaria. You can find me at madsciencefiction.com, and on Twitter, Ryan P. Decaria, and on Facebook, Just search for Ryan Decaria. And you can find my books on Amazon. Again, they were Devil in the Microscope and We Shall Be Monsters. I'm going to show them again because I love my covers. They follow a group of young science minds in high school as they discover their parents are mad scientists and are experimenting on them, and they use their special gifts from those experiments to band together and fight back against their parents. They're awesome. So I hope you're enjoying LTUE. I love this conference and hope that you enjoy the rest of your conference. Thanks for watching. Bye.
The first question. Welcome. Thank you for that really interesting presentation. Kimberly Edwards would like to know, I loved Hamilton, but can symbolism be overused in writing?
So it definitely can be heavy-handed. Just to give an example that I thought was heavy-handed and also worked is if you've watched the movie Super 8 with the kids filming a zombie movie while there was an alien background story, right? And you kept seeing him hold the locket, his mom's locket, right? So it's a symbol, it's kind of a talisman that he held. Every time he held it, you knew he was thinking about his mom. His dad reacted to it. Other people asked him about it, right? So the whole movie, you hear this reference to his locket, right? So we have that repetition, that motif of him holding on to the memory of his mom or whatever. You want to attribute to that. And then at the very end, the machine, the alien's pulling all the metal to it, right? And the locket kind of gets pulled away from him, right? Super heavy-handed, super like, and then he like lets go, right? And he's letting go of all that's holding him back, right? That anguish over his mom's death and things, and he lets it go, and it flies up and goes off with the alien, right? Sure, it's heavy-handed. Like, was it too much? Maybe it was kind of in your face, but it still worked. It still had those emotions. So I would say if you do it with intent and you're aware that to go for it and put it in as much as you can. If you're not aware of it, it could be a little jarring, right?
Okay, another question is, with subtle symbols like dress colors, how can you make that noticeable to your viewers?
I think just what I was saying before with repetition, right? The first time they probably won't see it. The next few times maybe they will. If you think about the movie Sixth Sense, like the color red, like most people went through that whole movie and didn't really notice, at least on a conscious level, that he was doing something. M. Night Shyamalan was doing something with that color. Maybe a few people caught on to it, maybe they didn't. But as you repeat things, right, we start seeing those symbols and start adding those connections. So I think you just got to do it enough that people start noticing, and maybe they won't notice it on the first view, and that's okay, right? A lot of times you add that depth, and people will come back to it and appreciate the depth that you put in, even if they didn't get it on the first viewing or reading or whatever. But they'll get it and appreciate it in time.
Okay, and that is actually the last question we have. If we want to hold out for a few more minutes, we can do that. Otherwise, we can wrap it up. How do you feel?
I just wanted to say I wish I could have put in the sound effects and the songs directly from the show, but I thought, copyright, we shouldn't put all that in. But I just want to reiterate that this is rewriting. This is adding craft to an idea, right? Taking something that you feel strongly about and putting content in that your readers can really bite into and analyze and take and pull apart, right? And see the craft behind what you do. So I encourage you, no matter what you're creating or even in what you're enjoying, that look for these things and add them as you can. And that you can do it. It's awesome.